As we proceed to this portion of I just want to say the celebration is much more than a conference. 'Cause we done celebrated so much today, and last night, the fellowship, Journey to New Light, the Village Initiative, and Food and Fellowship. But at this time, I have my good friend Anton Washington. He's going to share his wilderness experience and how God took him into his promised land. And then I have my good friend Senator Barbara Washington, and she too is going to share her wilderness experience and how God has taken her over into the promised land. So at this time, I'm going to have my good friend, Senator, if you can come, Sister Barbara, and share your.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to St. James. I don't remember our song, but anyway. So when Yvette asked me to come today, I do anything she says. So I was like, what am I supposed to talk about? And she told me to talk about my journey. So I want to preface with, I grew up in this denomination. My mother's a charter member of the original St. James United Methodist Church, which was called Cleveland Avenue. And without that foundation in my life, I don't think I'd be a senator today. So about 44 years ago, I had a fight with a young man, and I couldn't fight. I was a nerd. Went to Lincoln Academy for accelerated study. As you know, Lincoln is, for those of you not from Kansas City, that is a college prep school that we've had about 27 different names. I think it's just Lincoln Prep now. But at the beginning of the transformation into making it a college prep institution from 7th grade to 12th grade, it was called Lincoln Academy for Accelerated Study. And those of us that were there were in a gifted program. And the kids that lived in the neighborhood were still there as well. So trying to mesh, those of us that didn't live in the neighborhood had all come from gifted elementary schools. And so we had not been in school with the non-gifted students since 3rd grade. And so that the interaction was already going to be a little difficult. And you're in middle school and you're starting to like boys and that sort of thing. And I got into an argument on the phone with a young man, and he came over. I remember it was Martin Luther King's birthday, and we were at a school, and he came over and we got into a fight, and I couldn't fight. And so I went to protect myself with a knife, and I accidentally stabbed him, and he ended up losing his life. Now, I didn't know he passed for about a week. I called the 911 because I realized I had made a mistake. And I think at the time there was an ambulance place less than a mile away, and it took them about an hour to come because we were in an inner city community. And as my life has progressed, I've learned that sometimes they don't come in our community until the police tell them it's safe, as opposed to whether or not you need to be coming to save someone's life. No excuse, but so I was arrested, and that's where we want to talk about the incarceration part before I get to how I got to my journey. I was 13 years old. At the time in the state of Missouri, you could not be charged as an adult unless you were 13 and a half for any reason. But what was interesting is I'm going to start with the arrest, and I remember every moment of every minute, and it's been 44 years, and I'll never forget it. I was never ever read my Miranda rights. I was never asked anything, and they never even asked how do they reach my parents. They never asked if I wanted a lawyer. And although I was 13, I knew to say, can I call a lawyer? And I knew that because of my foundation in this denomination and in this church. While my mother's a charter member of St. James, I grew up in another church called Centennial United Methodist Church. And my lawyer, his dad happened to be, had just been our pastor, and so he was a lawyer, and I did say I want to call that person, and I wasn't allowed to do that. To this day, I have no idea how my mother knew how to find me. I have no idea how my mother, I don't know to this day. But they looked at my zip code, and I could hear them while I'm in this small cell sharing amongst each other and joking that I must be guilty. And I still don't realize, remember, I still don't know that he has passed on. And the conversation about who I was simply by my zip code was extremely disrespectful. And even as a child, I understood that, well, if you're doing this without knowing me, how do you treat other people based on their zip code? So I grew up in 64128, which is one of the highest crime and highest poverty zip codes in Missouri and frankly in America. But when my mother moved there in 1953, it wasn't like that. So my mother stayed there. We kept the house for over 70 years. So it let me know that I'm going to be judged not by who I am or what was done, but where you think I'm from. And that because you think I'm from a certain community, then these are things that must happen. And I want to point out that there were about 4 officers, and 2 of them were African American, so that really kind of soured me on our system. So moving forward, I get arrested. I was transferred to the juvenile facility, which is there on 27th Street. It still exists. It's on 27th between Holmes and Charlotte, I think, or Holmes and Oak or something of that nature. And then when you first get there, and I was a really skinny kid, I was little. You have to change your clothes, you have to take a shower, and you have to change into their clothes. One was I needed to change from my own personal underwear to their underwear. And I was like, I'm not putting on somebody else's underwears. So I remember changing the clothes, and then it was lunchtime. And the lunchtime is what changed me as a person. You know, in the Methodist Church, we live by the motto to wake up every morning and do all you can for as many as you can for as long as you can. And I'm not going to quote it correctly, for as long as you ever can. And I made up my mind that day that I would help all those kids that I was getting ready to see, right? So we go in, and it was lunchtime, and I was starving, right, because it had been several hours. And back then, there were tons and tons of kids in the juvenile facility. And I remember one girl asking me, just like, anybody seen the movie Life? And you remember they didn't want to give up their food? And the same thing. And I was like, well, can I taste it first? Because I'm really hungry. But as God would intervene, I just needed that little bit of time to see how folks were treated. I remember a 10-year-old being in there that appeared not to be there, that he shouldn't be there. So I was in that lunchroom for about an hour and 45 minutes before they called my name. And it was a Friday, and the young ladies were telling me, you know, you're going to have to spend the weekend before you can go before a judge. And I was terrified. I did not want to spend any time there. And God intervened, and I don't know how my mother knew where to find me. But they thought I was just getting called in to just to see the judge, and I would be right back. But as God saw fit, that was all I needed to see, because my mother was there with a lawyer, the lawyer that I asked for when I was in jail, in the main jail, and they got me out. And so I had been a really nerdy kid. I'm telling you, I was a real nerd. All I did was church and sports. That's all I did as a kid. Not over churchy, because if you ever met my mother, you would know that she don't believe in that. But, and we're Methodist, so we don't really like to go to church past 92 minutes on no Sunday. So, y'all, amen, y'all know how we do. But, you know, I went to choir rehearsal. I was in a youth group. In fact, I was on the state youth board appointed by the bishop and all that stuff. And I played sports. So I was kind of a corny kid. But even though I lived in what we call the hood, I didn't really know no hood stuff, y'all. Like, I was Girl Scouts and church and baseball and track. That was my world. But that opened me up to life is not the same for everybody. Everybody doesn't live in a home. Everybody's parents doesn't have a car. Everybody's parents doesn't have a job. And so after that, I got to go home for the weekend, and then I went to a mental health facility. It was either that or stay at that facility. And I was like, anything's better than the juvenile justice facility. I don't even know where you're talking about taking me, but please get me away from here. They were already fighting and everything in that hour and 45 minutes. It was fights, and I mean vicious fights amongst children, and I'd never seen anything like this. And I'll tell you, I grew up on 27th and Cleveland, so for me to say that now, if you know what 27th and Cleveland is now, that doesn't sound right. But we are home, we live in homes. We didn't do that type of thing. And so I go to the facility, and then that's when I realized that there's two different justice systems. So I'm in Research Hospital, and I always tell people, not that pretty psychiatric building you see on 63rd Street, because that did not exist. They have a floor, I think it's the 7th floor, and that's, I think now is they're more severe people, but that's all they had back then. And so as soon as we walk in, there was stuff flying by my head because there was an old lady throwing stuff at people, and I was like, don't leave me here neither, like, please. I am not whatever is going on. So I was there for 27 days, and what I saw was there were some other children there, and every last one of those children, had they lived east of Truce, would have been at juvenile detention. One had burned his house down. That's a crime, right? But his parents had insurance. So he was able to go to Marillac and Ozanam and other facilities that he had messed up his time at every last one of those. But he came from a middle-class family that could afford treatment, mental health treatment. And so he was allowed to come there. 2 other girls were thieves, and I mean big thieves. You know, when you're little, you know, you might steal some candy. You know, you might go to Walmart and steal some. These people was these was like criminals in the making. And they were there. And I asked my mom about that because I thought it was odd. None of these were black kids. And I'm like, well, but if a black kid did that, or a Hispanic kid did that, or even a poor white kid on our side of town, they don't let them come to mental health treatment. They don't try to figure out why they did what they did. Now, the young man that burned his house down, he really did have some mental health issues. We had to get the floor exterminated because he was hoarding food in his suitcases. So while and when I say he came from a very upper middle class family, so something wasn't right at home where he felt he had to hoard food. So from there, I got out early. And I had to have a trial, and we went through all that. And I couldn't go back to Lincoln. I went to my home school, which was okay because I grew up with them. So I was welcomed. But the judgment comes when people find out. Like, I saw some of y'all faces like, because I told you what I did. But it's a reason God put me in that place, because everybody couldn't come out of there, graduate from high school on time, get a full academic scholarship to the #1 journalism school in the country, graduate from there while running track, having a baby, and then come out and get a full academic ride to law school, practice law, and now I'm a senator. But I still live by Luke 12:48, and that's to whom much is given, much is required. And so, had I never, ever gone there, I have a sister who's never been in trouble or whatever, grew up in the same house. She's 11 years older than me. She has zero empathy. She has zero compassion. And and I don't blame her. That's just who she is. But she doesn't have that because she never got exposed and never had to put herself in the shoes of someone who had less than we had materialistic wise, and had less than we had, and a mother that was there for me, and a neighborhood who surrounded me, and a community or a village per se that wanted to make sure that I still succeeded. So what did I learn about it, and what do I do with that strength or with that voice that I have? In my 7 years in Jefferson City, I went to Jefferson City with 2 main goals, 3. 1, St. Louis people be making me mad. I hope ain't nobody in here from St. Louis, but they be getting all the money. And we need some money up here, don't y'all think? So that I was like, let me get us some more money. 2, I may never get the second goal, which is our tax increment financing system, which allows developers to get money and then they don't pay taxes. And as you see, the way our city is, it hurts us on this side of the town that more than it hurts them, and it definitely has decimated our public school system. So that one I'm getting a lot of pushback. But the main thing, and my #1 thing, was juvenile justice reform. Because in 1991, when this happened to me, you had to be 13 and a half before they could even consider charging you as an adult. And I'm not sure where they changed it, but at some point they decided they can move that down to 12. And I'm a firm believer, I don't care what the 12-year-old did. I just don't think mentally a 12-year-old has what it takes to be charged as an adult and placed in an adult system with grown folks. And then I found out that when we do try our children as an adult, we were putting them in adult prisons, which is a federal violation. So we needed to fix that. So my first year, we fixed this other thing, because when I got in trouble, you had to be 18 to be automatically charged as an adult, right? And at some point, we decided that our children were so bad that we would move that back to 17. Well, I know 17-year-olds that are juniors in high school. And technically, if you have a fight in high school and a bone gets broken or bled, they're getting charged with adult crimes. So the first thing, I was happy to be part of the team that moved that back. Missouri was the last state in the nation to do what we call raise the age. So we raised that back, so you have to be 18 before an automatic charge. And then took a couple of more years, and we said we got to move these children, because they're children, out of the adult penal system. Now, I'm not saying they get to come home, but they don't need to be somewhere. I always like to tell the prosecutors, let's work on what we're doing with these young people, because we can send them away because you think you need a notch in your belt for another crime. But when they come back, they're going to be a menace to society. And there's a way for us to fix that, where they can learn their lesson and they can be properly punished without full incarceration and without them being harshly incarcerated, so that they don't come back bitter. Because I firmly believe if you send a 16-year-old off to an adult prison where he is beaten and abused sexually, mentally, and physically, he is not going to come back a happy camper. And he may never get over what he experienced, right? And so we worked to get that change. So right now, all of our under 21-year-olds who were charged, who were children, juveniles, when they were either found guilty or pled guilty, have been removed from the Missouri Adult Corrections System. Now, if you were over a certain age, if you were over 17, we have not moved them, but we have moved the other children, and we have moved them to the juvenile facilities. So many people don't know that the juvenile system does have long-term prisons as well. And so we have moved them to those prisons, and then when they turn 21, if they still have time that they have to serve, then we'll transfer them back. And I'm probably talking too long, am I? Okay. Now, I want to tell you why that makes a difference, because the juvenile system is set up totally different than the adult system. You know, all are supposed to be about rehabilitation and ending recidivism, and recidivism is to make sure nobody commits a crime again. But our adult system is not like that. We are not guaranteeing that someone that goes into the adult system comes out better. We don't do that. And in the juvenile system, it is more of a treatment system, and it is designed to make sure that the child comes out better. The families are more involved. If you need to go to school, not if you need to, you are required to attend school. You have treatment, whether you need drug treatment or just mental health treatment, or whether you just need to talk. All of those things happen in the juvenile system that are not happening in the adult system. You don't have as many social workers. The goal in the juvenile system is to reunify that child with their family and back into society. And we want to give you all the tools, and this is nationwide, all the tools that you need to get you back there. So when you're 16 and you go to the adult system, you don't get any of those resources. And so you come back out, and sometimes you don't get it. You didn't even get a GED. And I know people that have been in prison a decade, and they still don't have a GED or anything. So there was no help like it should have been for them. Some people want to go to school while they're there. They want to get, you've heard about people getting their degree in college and that sort of thing. But they have to be introduced to that, and that's not something that is automatic in the adult system, which is why it was important for us to move these children. And then last year we did the final one, which was move that age where 12-year-olds could not. So what we have now is at 18, you're automatically tried as an adult. But if you're as young as 12, the prosecutor can file a motion. And upon that motion, they can ask the court, can you please let me move this 12-year-old from the juvenile system to the adult system and try them as an adult? And so my goal was to get that to 16, but I'm a realist. You know, I'm not one of those politicians that get to singing and selling you a rainbow, because I know that's a lie. And so my approach ain't always the best. I'm not the friendliest, smiliest person in the world, but I have a big heart and I do what is necessary. So I compromised and we moved that to 14. So now they have to be 14 before the prosecutor can file a motion to move them up to adulthood. Now I had to make another compromise to get that, and I didn't like that. And that is if the crimes are extremely violent, then they can still be a petition to try them as an adult at 12. Now the good part of Missouri is we really haven't certified any young people of that young age in a long time. But like I told my colleagues, that as long as the law sits there at 12, then that means that there's the opening to do that. And the second thing is, because none of my colleagues have obviously been in trouble, they don't understand the long-lasting effects and what it really means to certify a young person. So certification means that you go through a whole trial in front of a judge. And imagine all that stress and that fear, because that in the juvenile system there are no juries. So that one judge is going to make the decision as to, are we going to punish you as a young person in the juvie system, or are we going to send you over there to the adulthood? My certification failed because, one, it was an illegal petition that was filed, but we went to 2.5 days before the judge realized that I'm not of the age where you can even file this petition, because you needed to be 13 and a half. You remember I said at the beginning? And God stepped in because I was 13 and 5 months. So we never ever should have went through that. But the fact that I remember every day of that, and that's what I tried to explain to them, is that it can have an effect on kids. Everybody ain't gonna have my mama. Everybody won't. So to wrap this up, I got found guilty of manslaughter. We had a week-long trial, and I was sentenced to 90 days. Now when I go, I hope ain't none of y'all don't tell no kids I told y'all that though. Because when I go back to the facility, I gotta tell them what the crime was. I can't tell them I was only here for 90 days. And I really wasn't even there for 90 days because, again, your village, God steps in and gives you the right village at the right time. So we asked the judge, can I please go in May? Let me leave 8th grade early, right? Because these 90 days are gonna go, from the date you're giving me, I'm gonna start high school late. And then everybody in high school will know why I started late. And even as a kid, we understood that social emotional issue that's gonna happen if everybody know I started late, because I've been in jail all summer. So who cares if I skip a little bit of the 8th grade? Because remember, I came from a college prep school. So I love the people that I went to school with, but my books at Ashland in the 8th grade were the same books I had in the 5th grade. So I wasn't learning nothing. So I could leave here. And he would not do that. But that's okay. I had a nephew that lost his life during that time, so I got to come home for a week for that. And then the woman, her name was Barbara Rolfe, who was over the Hilltop facility, felt like it was more of a danger for me to stay there than it was for me to be released early. So I really only stayed there about 5.5 weeks, but not every day. I came home every weekend. They would throw all these mean things at my mother. My mother was like, I'd like for her to continue to seek treatment with the psychiatrist that we already have. And so they were like, well, you have to pay for it. And you have to get her there. Well, they're used to us being poor, right? And used to us to not having the resources. And I was blessed to have a mother that had those. And my mother said, no problem, I'll take her. As a matter of fact, why don't we do this? She come home on Sunday. She had to go see the psychiatrist on Monday. Why don't I bring her back on Monday night? And so that's what we did. They charged my mother child support for me to be there. That's okay. When I got out early, she went back, got her money. She was like, give me my money back. I already paid for this month. So I say that to say that it was a horrible thing for me to go through, but it definitely changed me as a person. I probably would have followed in my grandfather's footsteps, probably would have went to seminary school, probably would have been a minister, and I think the best ministers are the ones who have been out in the world. I think the best lawyers are those who have been out in the world. The best politicians are the ones who have been out in the world. I was a reporter for about 10 years, and that gave me something that I wasn't getting from this experience, and that taught me all about the rich people on the other side of town. But you can't let something like that happen to you be the end of who you are. And I've been blessed to be able to spend these last 40 or something years giving back all I can in every way that I can to make sure that little kids don't end up in a system that's really not for them. Thank you.
There we go. So now I have my good friend Anton Washington, and he's going to share his wilderness and how God brought him into his promised land. Anton.
Wow. This is not a bit much, but I'm grateful to be here. I am Anton Washington. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Creative Innovative. Um, and wow, I am 48. I may not look it, but I feel it. I'm not gonna lie to you. But my journey started as a child. I had some difficult issues, and I'm shared a little bit with this at a table where I was sitting at earlier today. And a lot of people don't know my story because I don't find myself that I need to share it much to those who don't appreciate the story to learn something from it. And so, as a young kid growing up in a family of 7, I had an older brother that was born that I don't even know because he died. And my mother had 6 other children. And I was in the middle of I'm the middle of 6 kids, 4 brothers and 2 sisters. I am a twin. And so there's someone else running around the city looking like me. So if you run into him, he's a little bit bigger than me or whatever, but he definitely is my twin when you see him. He always praises me for things that I'm doing now, but he also gets me in trouble too. So, you have to watch out for that. But as a young teen, as a young kid growing up in a family of 6 individuals, siblings, it was very hard and difficult to find myself. Someone who struggled with their sexual orientation, trying to identify who they were, even as a man, as a little kid, as a boy, as a girl, both or whatever. And so my brothers and them and my sisters and them started picking on me, and I never brought it to my mom at all. And then I went through a lot of serious issues with a lot of abuse, sexual, emotional, verbal, you name it. I was that person that felt every hammer that is in society today. And so as I grew up in a household that did not know anything about homosexuality, a life that was forbidden to talk about, you know what I'm saying, forbidden to even be amongst in a society where my mother was 23 years of age when she had me, and 10 years later I was 10, she was 33 years of age, and then 2 more years after that I was 12 coming out. And during that time period, I just felt so isolated when I didn't have nobody that was like me, in my family, and I was getting shunned and I was getting talked about, and it made me feel like I was the only person in the world no one cared about. And as a kid, and you have to understand, during them times, it was really, truly difficult for a child to understand in a family full of 6 kids, trying to figure out who they were and trying to be a part of their siblings. What we call is, a clan, And we, as a family, I was beaten, I was hit by my brothers and sisters. And when my father found out that I was what he called a sissy, he started beating me. That didn't work at all. My mother was ridiculed or whatever by my father. I only seen him up until the age I was 15. And my mother was beaten too because he thought that she gave birth to a boy that wanted to be a girl, someone with a sickness. Can you imagine how that made a mother feel? Watching my mother get beat, watching my mother go through so many changes in her life, and then my father started beating all his other kids, but he wouldn't even touch me. He thought I would taint him. He thought I would make him sick. My father was an individual who was alcoholic. He was a drug user. I would say my family wasn't broken. We just simply misunderstood. And my mother was taking us through a series of changes simply because she was uneducated. And as I grew older, I tried to find so many parts of my life through my father, trying to reach out to him, trying to be my mother's best friend as a young kid, trying to figure out who my mother was and how she can be able to love me for who I am. But she couldn't because she felt that the man that she loved her more by him beating her because he gave birth to me. And because he gave birth to me, he thought I was a girl in a man's form. And I was sick with an illness that he could not cure. I lived with that for a very long time throughout the years, my teenage years. And my mother thought I was going through a phase. And at 16, I told her that I had a boyfriend. At 16. The boy I was liking told me to go tell my parents because he told his parents or whatever. So I told my mom, I said, Mama, I'm gay. And she said, what? No, it's just a phase. No, word? Is this a phase? Yeah, it's a phase. It's a phase, baby. It's a phase. So I said, no. I really like this dude over here. He's the same age as me. His name is Steve. I like him. He make me feel happy. He loved me. You don't love me. You don't make me feel safe here. And when she seen that, she told me, well, then if you feel that way, then leave. I cried that night. I cried hard. I stood up against a wall in my mama's dining room, calling the dude that I said I love, but he would not pick up, so I can go live with him, so I can feel safe. I left my mama's home, didn't look back. I walked the streets over and over again, selling my body, getting with people I don't know, scared to death. I don't know anything about the streets. And at 16, I'm 48 now. But at 16, I didn't know anything about the streets. And they was more treacherous then than they are now today. More worse then than they are then because nobody understands homosexuality. So I walked the streets of Truth, Maine, Independence Avenue, you name it, I was there. My body was used as a symbol of sex. People took me in, did what they wanted to do with me. They used me for food stamps, they used me for general relief, or whatever that was called back in the day. But I was used. But a family seen me, because I knew I had to go back to school. I knew I loved my school a hell of a lot more than I love anything else. I knew that. So I took a journey to school. This is when I was going to Central. I transferred over to Northeast, all on my own. And I don't know how I did it, because I'm telling you right now, back in the day, we can do things, you know what I'm saying, over the phone that makes things a little more easier, but now it's complicated. You have to have that documentation. I was a student in my freshman year going to Northeast Law and Magnet School. I love that school. It changed my life for 2 years. I met a teacher, didn't even know I was even homeless. Her name was Miss Mayhew. And she didn't know anything about me. She didn't know that I was homeless. She didn't know that I had all these issues and these problems. But one thing she did know, that I had ambition, I had potential. She was my English teacher. I love English, y'all. And when I sat down one day and I was doing a paper, and it's an assignment I had to turn in. The next day she read it. She said, first of all, I'm gonna tell you if anybody doesn't know, my whole entire name is Martinez Anton Curry. Anton Washington Curry Sales. Anton Washington is my middle name. Okay. So when she said, Martinez, come to my desk. I said, yes, Miss Mayhew. And she says, I love what you wrote. I did not know this. I'm gonna call some people. I said, no, don't call nobody. Please don't call nobody. My mother's gonna find me. She said, what's wrong? I told her the story. Well, you come home with me, baby. You come home with me. And I looked at her. I said, are you saying I can come live with you? And she said, yeah, you can come live with me. You come stay with me for a couple of days. We'll figure it out. I remember the house. It's on the corner of 62nd and McGee in the Brookside area. And I promise you, the house was the biggest house I've ever seen in my life. I lived in apartments, you know what I'm saying, in Parker Square and T.B. Walkers and all those other things. And I just was flabbergasted by the house I was entering. I was like, my mama don't live like this. She don't. Yeah, all these rooms. And so she showed me how to garden. I sing today because of her. I really do sing today because of her. Lord, and thank you, Jesus. And she took me through everything that was needed for a young man to thrive, to grow. She taught me how to read more. We talk about Britannica in the car, encyclopedias. You know what I'm saying? When they come through your door, whatever. And I learned about those. I used to read encyclopedia almost every day. Literally. I was a nerd too. But at the end of the day, she showed me how to live without judgment. She showed me how to live and thrive with opportunity that is waiting for me on the other side. I went back to school one day, and they, the PA system, they called us to the office. And Mrs. Mayhew said she already knew, but I did not know she knew. They just called me to the office. So she walked me down to the office, told the class she'd be right back, walked me down to the office. And when I walked into the office, the principal office, I seen my mother, the police, and the principal. And I started shaking. I said, why is she here? Why is she here? This is your mom. I said, I don't care. She don't love me. I sat down because back in the day they called it APB, right? They wanted to send out APB on a juvenile that's missing in the community. My mother did that because of money, because she didn't have that sixth income in her house. I forgave her since then because forgiveness is powerful. But I went back into custody and went through a court system that started a system in my head as to what I was to my mom, who I was to them, to the system. And when I went to court, I had to go back into her bundle of a home that she called, this is family. I went through the system, and I ended up going back home. And when I went back home, they put me on an ankle bracelet monitor so I won't leave. A perimeter is around the house. You can't leave within a certain distance. My mother would leave at some points and sometimes, and I even put in a sheet or a call to say, I'm taking my son or my family out somewhere. She would leave me at home and take the whole entire family. And the only thing I would remember in her head was she would say to me, I'm not taking you nowhere because you might taint the other children. That stuck with me, and it still stuck with me for the rest of my to today at 48. I forgive her, but it still sticks with me because it's trauma. And as I grew older, I found myself meeting other friends and, and everything. And I ended up going to prison because I was feeling like I needed more love from somebody else. I met a guy. Didn't know he had no good intentions for me, none whatsoever. He showed me how to take care of myself and how to survive. So I cut the ankle bracelet off. And I went with him. Ended up in jail for trying to write checks. Didn't know no better. Didn't know no better at all. I was a junior in high school at Ruskin High School. At that time, I flourished more when I went through all the prison aspects. And I'm going to tell you right now, rape is a trauma you cannot get over. It's embedded into your skin because you feel every part of when someone's doing whatever God knows what to you. I was a victim. I am a survivor now. I promise you. Anybody ever tell you I'm a strong individual because of that? No one should have to go through that at all. I was in prison. I was gang raped. I was beaten. And I was ostracized at every level at the age of 17. I did 30 months in the state, Missouri's Department of Corrections, in the Western Missouri Correctional Center. And people don't understand when a young kid at the age of 17 go to prison, they don't know nothing. They trying to fit in. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to find safety. Trying to find somebody to take care of me so I don't know anything. But when I opened the door to the wrong people, I ended up getting the worst outcome ever. I was beaten, I was raped, and everything while I was inside the penal institution of Missouri Department of Corrections. And I say those two individuals that did that, they got a life sentence in prison on top of what they already had. I'm happy because of that, because no one should be able to feel like they need to be giving their self to someone when you're saying no. I came out of prison, went home. My mother still didn't accept me. I was trying to be this trans woman individual that my mother says, not in my home, or whatever, not here. I had long hair, trying to be like her, you know what I'm saying? Well, guess what? She put me out again. 3 months after I was out of prison, I was walking the streets. Know anything. The city has changed. At 30 minutes I was gone, I was still living in Grandview. I still remember the address. But what I want to tell you, my successes started from every part of my life, from rape, from sex work, from drug abuse, to homelessness, to being an alcoholic, to victimizing other individuals, and to absolutely putting myself as a victim. I can't victimize to myself because I did not know no better. I didn't know how to deal with some of the traumas I was dealing with. I was inducing trauma to other individuals, and that was wrong. And so as I got older, I did 5 prison bids, 30 months, 5 years, 7 years, 15 months, and I did 12 years just this last time. I've been home 7 years. 7 years, July 29, 2024. I've been home 7 years, returning. And I don't remember a lick of it, but it's the foundation that God will send you through a storm to help you realize what He got work for you to do, to help you realize how you can connect with other individuals that's facing the same traumas, to help them come out of what they're going through. People don't understand you have to humble your mouth before you speak because you don't never know what the person's going through. I have become more humble in my walk because of who I am today. I came from home from prison and see my community has not changed. And for those 2 years, I was working as a housekeeper at the Marriott International, went from that to a banquet lead, and from that went from a night auditor. I got my education in prison, y'all. I ain't gonna lie to you. I got my education in prison. An associate's from Cedar Valley College, Community College. I promise you, if people in prison are in prison and they take an opportunity to do anything because they don't want to, you have to want to. I'm right now going after my bachelor's in behavioral health with the emphasis on public administration with a minor of mathematics. Now, I promise you, I'm going to be a powerful force to deal with after I'm finished. I am already today. But I'm going to tell you, the tsunamis and storms and the hurricanes that God will walk you through, send you through, he has never ever left me. He never left me, because all the things I was going through, I was meant to go through those things to help other individuals today, as I have been helping individuals all my life in every which way that I did not know I was doing. But God was just sharpening my toolbox. God was giving me tools that I didn't think I would even have. I didn't think I needed that rake. I didn't think I needed that trimmer. I didn't think I needed any of that. I didn't think I needed that screwdriver or that Phillip head or whatever. I didn't think I needed that lawnmower. But God said, yes, you do. Because when you walk in the path of God and righteousness, you're going to be cutting down some things. That's what he said. You're going to be cutting down some things. And when he said you're going to cut down some things, and when you get to the other side, you're going to see me. You're going to see me. And when you get to me, I'm going to tell you, well done, my son. Well done. And where I'm at today, from all the things I've been through in my life, from when I was a kid to where I'm at now, I share bits and pieces of my story. Creative Innovative did not happen overnight. It didn't happen in prison. I created it when I was in prison. No one wanted to try to figure out how am I going to live my life helping other individuals. You may not know it for those who are from other states, but those who are from Kansas City, the Scott Ecke Women's Center was created because I seen a friend freeze to death naked in the streets of Kansas City, a block away from the mayor's house. And I took her to the streets. God will use you. And I told you, he didn't only take me. It took 100 other people behind me. And we stood there, and we was in a freezing cold, because so was Scott Ecke. He sat there, and he died, no one helping him. And when I seen his body, I folded, because he was my friend. When I was homeless, he helped me when I was needed to eat. He helped me when I didn't know anything about going anywhere, getting any resources. He helped me. He was lost to a cause where he didn't have to. There was no resources that would understand what he was going through in his mental state of mind. That's the reason why I'm going through the college degree that I'm going through, because I understand it. A person with lived expertise like me is well needed at every table, so everyone can be able to understand what that looks like, how you can understand it more, better. I'm always boots on the ground. Baby, you would never see me behind a desk or an office. I'm sorry. I go to them because they're my family. When I was in the streets, they're the only people that cared about me. Creative Innovative is an organization who cares, who brings hope, who is a catalyst to so many other things that's going on in Kansas City, the funding and all of these things. But once again, they're getting dollars off our backs. That ain't right. That ain't right at all. These two gentlemen over here are part of my program that's called the Low Barrier Employment Program for Clean Up KC, that me, Randall Park Shaw, and her husband created. And I created it while I was on my deathbed 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when I had my stroke. And you couldn't even tell me standing here that I had one of those. You couldn't tell. I had 2 holes secured in my heart. They went in there and put in the mesh, put in the device, and all these other things. So yeah, you look at a walk-in miracle that could have died and not been able to produce. But these 2 gentlemen right here, this is the reason why I do it for. And countless others before them, and countless others after them. I want to see them thrive. It's not about the money with me. It's not. It never has been. God will provide. And at the end of the day, these young men need to have a beacon of hope. Seeing someone stand before all of you doing just what they do best is speaking out with their story, sharing their experiences, and showing there is a way to freedom. I believe in Matthew 25, and I also believe in Ephesians, the whole army. Put on the breastplate, because guess what? I put it on in 2013 when I gave my life to Christ and never took it off. So I walk with the faith. I walk with my head high. And when I walk into rooms, people will be like, oh my God, that's because God is sucking the air out of the room to let you know his presence is here. I am not here to find people to ostracize or demean or be prejudiced or discriminative or any of those matters. Those are not of God. Those things of the man who is walking upon the earth, sharing all the disparities to create separation. I would not allow that to happen while I'm alive. Creating Innovative is a beacon of hope, right along partnering with Dr. Yvette Richards and the United Methodist Church across our Kansas City metropolitan area to do the work, to help dismantle what mass incarceration looks like. I have been on the federal side. I have been in the state of Kansas. I have been in the state of Missouri. And all the systems are totally different. But one of the things they got one in common, they capitalize off human beings. They capitalize off us. So I thank y'all for having me. I appreciate y'all, but I will say this to you. God is always in the midst of everything that we do, say, and live for. He will provide, because he's provided for me for so long, because I'm not looking for a $5,000 check. I'm not looking for a $500 grant. I'm looking for the money that will help save the lives of those who are suffering and struggling. That's what I'm here to do. And if anybody is a part of that, I am with you. Thank you.
Amen. So, Dr. Roper, you got 13 minutes. No, if we just could extend a little grace. We appreciate the stories. We appreciate the details of our speakers. I know we're on a timeline, but he said he was running late, and he made it here. And so just out of respect, let's give it up for Dr. Roper as God comes and shares through you.
I'm going to do it quick. Y'all ain't got to worry about it. So I'm going to start this by saying for 15 years I was known as offender 102-3333 in the Missouri Department of Corrections. I served 15 flat. I was released August 12th, 2014. I completed my parole in 2019. As Brother Washington just told you, the Department of Corrections, or as we called it inside, the Department of Corruption, is not a place of healing. It's not a place of progress unless you make it a place of progress, right? We have in Missouri around 36,000 inmates. That's a lot, but Missouri annually releases 19,000 of them. The problem is, within 3 years, we back up 40% of those people. mainly for minor violations, fees, not completing mandated programming, things of that nature. And what I want to tell you is that as an offender, when you come out, you're faced with so many challenges from inadequate jobs, inadequate housing, inadequate social services. For most offenders, when they come out, they can't get a job, nor can they get food stamps. I just want you to put those two things in next to each other. Not only will you not give me a job, but then you won't allow me to get food. These are your neighbors. These are people that are going to be living right next to you. What do you think that causes? The mentality of reoffending. If I can't do it by legal means, I will do it by any means, right? So we have one of the highest recidivism rates in the world, not the country. Over 83% of offenders will go back to prison within 9 years. Federal statistics, 83%. And we say the system is working, right? Working for who? Well, there's some investors that it's working for, some people who are tied to the system that love the fact that we have the largest incarcerated population in the world. So we also have a responsibility to help those who want to be helped. So I started a nonprofit geared to aiding offenders after release. Why? Because you heard them introduce me as Dr. Brian, right? I knew that there was one thing that was for certain. They can take a lot of things away from you when they incarcerate you. They cannot take a degree away. And what they don't tell you when you're incarcerated, that the recidivism rate for people who have a bachelor's degree, whether it's bachelor's of arts or bachelor of science, is exactly 0%. Let that resonate. Let that sink in. So they know the fix, they've researched the fix, but they haven't implemented the fix. So I studied and did my due diligence, and what I found was there was 4 areas that if men and women are educated in, that they will reduce their likelihood of reoffending. First of all, you got to re-socialize, right? Because when you're in prison, you get to be a land pirate. That's what I call it. You're a land pirate. Anything goes. Pirates know they can rob, pillage, rape, steal. They can do anything, right? So in prison, most people are land pirates because you have 2 individuals in prison, predator and prey. And you learn very quickly and have to make a decision very quickly which one you're going to be. Some people don't get to make that decision. I'm going to tell a story, and it's sad, of a 17-year-old young man that was in prison with me at Mobley Correctional Center. Young man had a 10-year sentence. He could not buy tobacco from canteen, but he could do a sentence with adults. He was brutally assaulted. He wasn't assaulted like he was beat up. Graphically, he had a lock put up his rectum. 17-year-old young man. Now we can think about the devastation that would cause, but I'm going to talk about he had to get out. He had a 10-year sentence. He was only going to do 8.5 years. 10-year sentence, so 17 to 25. So think about the harm, the trauma that this young man now has to live through. So does he need some resocialization? Absolutely, right? He needs to be resocialized. He needs to be treated like a human. So one of the things that I talk about is, how do we come out of prison and resocialize? I had a benefit. I had a huge networking system. Much like you, Mr. Mike Shaw, my fraternity brother, called me about day 3 of me being out and said, hey, you need a job? And yes, the job was throwing trash for Kansas City. Now when I got incarcerated, I was 12 hours from a bachelor's degree. But I was humble enough to say, I know the system well enough to say, I need a job, right? Because what parole officers do when they don't tell you is if you get that 40-hour full-time job, they relax some stipulations on you. So in order to keep a job, though, you got to know how to work in a job, right? You got to know how to communicate with people on your job. You got to know how to maneuver in that avenue. It's not prison, so you can't talk to people like you would talk to them in prison. So we deal with that. Economically, you got to know how to budget your money. 17 years old, coming out at 25, never had work, never had his own place. He doesn't know how to budget, right? And this is over and over again. These guys come out and they don't know how to live in society. So what's the responsibility? We have to teach them. Educationally, we talked about that earlier. Education is so important. Whether it's trade, whether it's an associate's, whether it's a bachelor, getting your education is equivalent to a path of continued freedom. And then spiritually, I don't care who you are, if you're not connected to God, you will not make it. And that don't have nothing to do with being in prison. If you ain't connected to God, you ain't gonna make it. And even if you make it, you ain't gonna make it. And so we try to connect them with places of worship where they can connect with people to have those pro-social networks. These are catchphrases that you hear in the Department of Correction. You need to have pro-social networks and do pro-social activities. So my nonprofit is designed to help them do all that. And I say that to say is, we have a problem with mass incarceration. But really the problem is we have a problem with what happens after release. I took so many programs inside of the Missouri Department of Corrections. You know what I had an opportunity to take when I was released? Nothing. I wasn't an issue, so the parole officer didn't say, hey, we have this wonderful program for you to go take. We have these people who will help you get a job. I knew nothing of second chance or connect to success, none of those things. Why? Because I had a job. So those programs weren't even introduced, and they're not being introduced. And so I began to think, because my parole officer, oh, you're doing so great. You got your bachelor's degree a year after you got out. Oh, you got your master's degree 2 or 3 years after you got out. And I said, yeah, but why am I the exception to the rule? Why is it my story the rule? 19,000 people get out. Why aren't we fostering a system that says, let's make sure that these people can be successful after release? And I'm telling y'all, I did not want to go get my PhD, but God said, you going, and so I did. Because I was in prison because I didn't listen to God in the first place. So I wasn't trying that again. I'm not insane, so I'm not going to try the same thing over and over again. And I said, well, God, what do you want me to do with this PhD? And he said, tell a story. And I said, what story? The story. And so my dissertation was entitled Missouri Reentry Process, the effectiveness of the Missouri reentry process from the perspective of former offenders. And what do you think I learned? One, some surprising things that I learned that I didn't expect to learn. Of the men I interviewed, most came from two-parent homes. Most of them had a positive viewpoint of crime before prison, meaning they had made a rational choice. It's easier to commit crime than it is to live according to the rules. When we discussed what programs they took, many of them had taken programs in the Missouri Department of Corrections, whether educational, vocational, or some type of reintegration type program. When asked, was that program effective in helping you reacclimate with society? The overall and resounding answer was no. And then so we get a little leeway when doing the dissertation. You have to set your questions out first. But if something comes up like that, you get to ask a follow-up question. And my follow-up question was why? And the answer was because the reentry process stops the moment they open the gate for you. Because it's designed just for you to reenter. Y'all got it? It's just designed for you to reenter. So in order for us to really make some social changes and really talk about social justice, it takes these types of settings. It's not on the Missouri Department of Correction. It's on the communities in Missouri. It's on the communities across the nation. If we're ever going to reach what the technical term is decedence, which is non-offending, then it takes a whole community. And yes, it's going to take some legislation from people like Barbara Ann, because we need people in politics to say, hold up, we got to do it right. And we got to give these men and women a true second chance when they're released. And I think that we're capable of doing that, right? We most of us are believers, and we believe in second chances, right? Because if not, where would our faith be? Because we serve a God of second chances. We actually serve a God of third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. And if we were just talking biblically, Jesus said to forgive 77. There we go. So we know that forgiveness is something that we're instructed to do biblically. What does forgiveness look like? Forgiveness looks like forgetting someone's past. What do? We run background checks on people and hold it over their head. I have a whole PhD, and I promise you I can't get a job right now over a warehouse. Let that sink in. Let it sink in. Because I have a whole PhD and I get told no a whole bunch. No, I don't want to. But what I'm saying is I've been hired to places. And I'm going to put some of them on blast. I've been hired to KCK Community College. Your background check didn't clear. Of course it didn't. I told you when you interviewed me that I was a felon. I've been turned down. Bethune-Cookman interviewed me, loved me, turned me down, background check. 10 years, not an inkling of police involvement. And what they're going off of is a case that happened in 1999. We're not even talking about this century anymore. So the problem is that we don't have enough people in the community standing up and saying, hey, enough is enough. We don't have laws that allow us as offenders to get our name back at some point. We need our name back. We've served our time. We've done what you've asked us to do. We know we've messed up, and when you mess up, there is some punishment attached to that. If you get caught, you got to expect the punishment. But the punishment should not exceed the sentence. We got to get past this safety in the public interest, because you were releasing 19,000 offenders annually. So it's not about the safety of the community, because if it was about the safety of the community, you wouldn't release us. So what can we do to change? We have to stand. You know, there's a gospel song that when you can't do anything else. So people who aren't convicted felons, stand for us. Convicted felons, use your voice while you're standing. Shout it. Don't just go by the wayside. Don't just get so frustrated that you give up. Continue to stand. Because I might not be able to get a standard job, but I've gotten flown all the way out to Utah to speak. So God will make a way for you. But as he's making a way for you, other people need to stand in the gap. That's the challenge. Are we going to stand with people who cannot stand for themselves? And if you're not doing that, you are going to be surprised when you get to heaven's door and Jesus says, did you help the least of these? Because if you haven't helped the least, and if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me, right? And I don't think any of us want that conviction. And if we really think about it, aren't we all criminals in the eyesight of God? So let's not talk about it. Let's be about it. I love y'all and I thank y'all for this opportunity. And I apologize for being late, but my 9 to 5 ends at 3:30 and I still snuck out a few minutes early. But I appreciate you guys asking me to come. One Life Second Chances right now is in a rebranding phase. We're changing our name to Seize Freedom to reflect our true mission, which is not to just help former offenders who've gone to prison, but we want to start moving into probation and parole and those who are pre-sentencing to aid in the system to make that transition from criminal to a positive force in the community. Thank y'all and God bless you. Seize Freedom stands for social, educational, economical, and spiritual freedom.
Amen. Amen. Let's give it up for those that share their story this afternoon. You know, I say this, I know we get ready to take our break, is this. My mother was a school teacher. She would stand before her class and put on the board 2 + 2 = 4. She would tell her students, she said, if you follow my example, you will get an A. And she would sit down. You see, the system don't want society to get 2 + 2. See, the system and society doesn't want to see 2 + 2. 'Cause my mom said, if you follow my example, you will get an A. The system does not want you to see 2 + 2. They don't want to show these pictures. What they want to show is the khakis and the orange. That's the picture that they want them to see. But I believe our call to action is this here. If you haven't been locked up, you got a story to tell. How did you stay out the system? You see, sometimes we believe, I don't have a testimony story like yours, Brother Stephen. No, but you got a story, and if you've never been in the system, how did you stay out? How did your kids stay out? How? You got a story to tell. Not just those that have overcome the system. I share with people, my dad's a pastor, my mother an educator. I'm a former football All-American, still got records. I'll never forget when the judge sentenced me to 70 months in federal prison. He said, Mr. Barbie, he said, you don't fit the type. You're educated, you're a licensed ordained minister. You come from a good family. I never forget he said this before he hit that gavel. He says, I don't know what demons you've been wrestling with. He said, but Mr. Barbie, I pray you face your demons. That was the greatest word spoken because God allowed me to sit down for 44 months, a spiritual timeout, to show me passion and purpose. Tell your story. Brothers, tell your story. Brothers, tell your story. Because if you don't tell your story, it'll never be told. I want to thank Tosca. Oh, we got some. Oh, okay. We're going to Pentecostal now. We're going to the second service. No, I'm just joking. Do we have any questions for our panelists? We have any questions for our panelists?
Any questions? I'm going to start off. I have a question for the senator because, so, you know, we are all leaders in our own right and in our own spaces, and you have taken your leadership to another level, being an elected official. And so what would you say to some of our faith leaders about how we might engage on the next level of leadership? We were talking in the car about becoming a part of sentencing commissions and volunteering on different levels in terms of elected officials or what have you. What would you say to encourage us to look at that landscape of leadership in terms like what's next?
That's a great question, and definitely appreciate it, especially our community. You know, we used to be, our leadership used to come from faith, especially for African Americans, and at some point we stopped that. The one thing is, you can use faith to support the community and put in your mind to be a servant leader as opposed to worrying about the politics of it. And so one of the ways that your voices can be heard is to apply for all the commissions that exist. I've been begging people for 7 years to go on our website and make application to not just things for incarceration, but anything that you're interested in. Then let me know you made the application so I can go to the governor's office and get you on there. And we can do that. You do that with the city, you do that with the state, you do that with the feds, you do that with the county. So I think that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is doing things like this, but doing them on a regular basis and starting local. You know, they say voting is local, all elections are local. Everything starts local. So, and then the third thing is figure out a way to get to the kids. I was real angry this year when I couldn't get all crimes eliminated from certifying a 12-year-old to a 14-year-old. But then these last few months, I still don't want the children certified, but I don't want them to think they can get away with anything. Because in the state of Missouri, we actually don't have a law preventing minors from having a gun. And that is something we've been trying to do. Because if we put that in our law, then that child cannot be, it'll be a juvenile crime. So, but I would say get involved in whatever interests you, whether that's incarceration issues, whether that's, you know, the Marcellus Williams issue that just happened. Get involved and make sure your voices are heard. And then finally, get in your car and drive to Jeff City. Because that's what I tell people, like that's where we are from January to May. We are sitting there all day, every day, and we need to hear from you. Or we're going to continue to have laws that are not for the majority, but for whoever has the easiest way to get to, those that are elected.
Questions? Yes.
Thank you. It's not a question. I want to thank all three of them. All three of them I work with, and they're here doing a favor for me, so we're grateful. But I do want to say this is what we have to do. If you have people in your connection that you know are excellent in the area of expertise, make sure they're on a panel. I'm going to use Brian as an example. Center for Conflict Resolution is an organization here in Kansas City that deals with conflict. They're with the police department, they're in the school district, and they deal with issues from family members to community leaders that have issues. And so conflict resolution. The other night you saw about 20 young men that were here from TCKC, an organization that Center for Conflict Resolution works with. Well, I served on their board, and they're talking about black men in prison. I'm in a room with all white men. What's the problem? So I like Manika. I got to go to the wife first, my Sarah. Manika, do you think Brian's schedule's too heavy? I don't want to put anything else on him where he going to be sort of like his plate is full. Oh, no, Yvette, you can reach out to him, Sarah. Dr. Roper, will you be willing to serve on the board for Center for Conflict Resolution? I brought him onto the board, and they were like, oh, wait, what? Yes, Dr. Roper, African-American male, successful. And so when we sit on boards and agencies and we do not bring individuals along that have the expertise that can sit in the room and sit at the table and share the information, we're doing a disservice. So I do want to thank them because I call on them a lot. I ask them to be on programs, and they have never failed me. So I just want to publicly say thank you to all three of you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else have a question before we go on break? Yes.
Of course, I have a question. First, your stories wowed me. I'm also system impacted, and I feel like I've walked the same path. I wanted to know if you guys have a way that I can connect, or people that I know can connect with you all or your organizations, and if you're willing to offer that here.
You can reach me, barbara.washington@senate.mo.gov. And as I have told Mr. Washington a million times, if that went too fast, I hate when people say Google me, but that is really the easiest. Just Google Senator Barbara Ann with an E, Washington. Every senator has their own page in our system. At the bottom of that page, it says email the senator, and it may ask you for some information or whatever, so we can put you on our newsletter.
You can reach me by email at briancroper@outlook.com. So that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And I don't turn down assignments very often. So if you need me, if you need to talk to me, I'm always willing to help, even if it's just a conversation. You can also reach me, especially if you're coming out and you need someone to talk to. You can reach me by phone at 816-286-5308.
Thank you, Anton.
And you can reach me at awashington@creative innovative, not innovation, because everybody says creative innovation. No, it's creative innovative. They both have TIVE at both ends, .org. Or you can reach me at 816-313-2474. I'm not giving out my cell phone number because it rings off the hook every day, all day, I promise you. But you can also go to my website too as well. It's called creativeinnovative.org. And you will see the immense amount of information and reports that we do. And I just want to share this with everybody. From 2022 to 2023, with the help of United Methodist Church, they have helped me house over 193 individual people. And that is immensely large for an organization that is of 5 people. And so this year we are at 113. And I know by the end of the year we'll be over the number that we were in 2022 to 2023. So I thank United Methodist Church for helping us and assisting us in that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. If there are no other questions, I know from doing this year after year after year that it is not a small feat to relive trauma when you tell your stories. And so that is something that we do not take lightly, that you would stand before us and recall in order to help us. So I want you all to stand up and give them a round of applause for your vulnerability and for your willingness to share. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So as we close this portion of the session, we will have another break, and then y'all know I'm gonna feed you. Dinner is on its way. So we'll have dinner here at 5 o'clock. Thank you all again.
Thank you.